There's a reason Hollywood never lets you catch the smell of an outlaw's shirt. Most people know the legend of John Dillinger, public enemy number one. The man with the crooked grin who made robbing banks look like a sport and outfoxing the law a kind of dark art. But here's the question that really haunts his story once you start peeling back the myth. What did it actually feel like, day after day, to survive as America's most wanted man? What did Dillinger's world taste like, smell like, do to his body? This isn't a story about glamorous getaways or perfectly staged gunfights. It's about festering wounds, rotten food, lice, yes, actual lice, and the slow misery of trying to stay alive while your own body turns against you. Forget the movie poster. We're heading for the part where your worst enemy isn't the FBI, it's your own skin, your stomach, your nerves, and whatever's crawling in your shirt. Let's start with one ugly detail that outlaw movies always skip. Gangsters didn't just dodge bullets. They limped, oozed, and itched their way through every single day, wounded and exhausted, trusting each other to play doctor with nothing but a bottle of whiskey and whatever rags weren't already holding something together. Think about Bonnie Parker. After that car crash left her with third-degree burns, she and Clyde were treating her wounds with egg whites, borrowed sheets, and whatever kitchen sink salves they could scrounge. Dillinger's crew faced the same endless bodily struggle. You don't get a dramatic shootout or a white-knuckle car chase without paying for it in blood, skin, and sleep. So, if you really want to know what it meant to be Dillinger, you have to start with the basics. How do you eat, sleep, and heal when every single day could be your last? Every knock at the door might be the law, and every cut could finish the job the police started. It's physical. It's disgusting. It's survival in the filth and chaos of Depression-era America. Rented safe houses, sweat-soaked shirts, and the constant stench of fear and infection. The reality is this: Dillinger's hideouts were rarely the plush suites you see in the movies. Most of the time, they were cramped, overheated back rooms in boarding houses, greasy apartments above bars, or one-room shacks with no plumbing. Picture this: a fugitive and his battered crew staggering into a new hideout after barely slipping away from a police dragnet. They're still bleeding under their coats, skins slick with sweat and road grime, clothes torn and clotted with blood. Their first priority isn't plotting another score. It's eating before they pass out, patching up wounds that are threatening to turn ugly, and maybe, just maybe, scrubbing off a layer of filth before the lice get a new foothold. Food? That'll kill the outlaw fantasy in a hurry. With law enforcement swarming every city and town, Dillinger's gang couldn't exactly walk into a diner for steak and eggs. Sometimes they sent the least recognizable member for groceries, a few cans of meat, beans, maybe some stale bread. More often they made do with what they could carry: cold, greasy tins of mystery meat scooped out with dirty fingers, hard bread that left your gums bleeding, maybe an egg or two if they got lucky at a farm stand. If you think Dillinger's crew was out there feasting, think again. This was the diet of people too famous to risk being seen, desperate to avoid anything that could leave a trail. And sleep? Forget it. Try resting on a mattress that's already soaked with other people's sweat and secrets, filthy sheets crawling with lice or fleas, the whole room stinking of old beer, gun, oil, and unwashed bodies. The windows are blacked out, the air is stale, and every creak in the hallway sounds like the end. You close your eyes, but your wounds ooze against dirty bandages, and the constant itch of lice keeps you scratching through the night. Sleep isn't rest, it's a struggle. Your body trying to heal while your brain refuses to drop its guard. Wounds were a nightmare all their own. Hollywood loves a dramatic, clean bloodstain and a quick recovery. In real life, every gunshot, knife cut, or twisted ankle was a ticket to disaster. Doctors, out of the question. Show up at a hospital with a bullet wound and you might as well just confess. The gang played field medic with whiskey, shirt rags, and hope. Infection was always lurking. A bullet graze that didn't kill you could still lay you out with fever, swelling, and a stink that made hiding even harder. This was daily life for Dillinger. Sleep in filth, eat what you can, patch your wounds, and hope your own body didn't betray you before the law could. That's just the opening round. Lice, exhaustion, and hunger chewed at you. But the real crisis always came when something finally tipped, when a wound started to rot, a fever set in. Or the lice got so bad nobody could sleep. Because for a fugitive, one festering wound, one night of sleep too deep, or one raging fever could be the end. The legend is easy. The misery, that's what kept Dillinger alive, for a while anyway. If you want to know what actually brought down Dillinger's gang, it usually started with the body. You could work around hunger or keep moving when you were tired, but your body didn't care about your mugshot or your careful plan. The moment a wound started to stink, a fever crept in, or the lice became unbearable, the whole crew was at risk. Say one of Dillinger's men took a bullet across the arm in a messy escape. In the movies, that's just a dramatic grimace, a white bandage, and back to the action. In real life, that wound was in charge now. You'd limp into a safe house, hoping nobody saw your bloody shirt or the way you winced at every step. Everything revolved around infection. Maybe there's a bottle of whiskey, not for drinking, for pouring on the wound, and a pile of dirty rags, a half-used roll of medical tape. But mostly just desperation. You grit your teeth, pour the whiskey, and try not to scream. Forget anesthetic. Forget sterilized anything. And the lice. Oh, the lice were the real survivors here. Forget the FBI. The true trackers were the lice living in your clothes, your hair, your beds, everywhere. Every safe house turned into a battleground against these little monsters. Shirts and jackets stiff with sweat and grime crawled with eggs in the seams. The itching never stopped. Scalps bled from scratching. Red bites flared around collars and wrists. The gang even joked about their mascots, because what else could you do? If it got truly out of hand, it was time to burn the bedding, boil what clothes you could, and strip down for a frantic wash in a freezing tin basin, hoping no neighbor peered through a cracked curtain. Sleep didn't get easier the longer you ran. The more desperate the hiding place, the less rest you found. Maybe you'd hole up in a back room above a noisy bar, a lumpy mattress, dirty sheets, and the ghost of every disaster that happened there before you. If you managed to sleep at all, you'd be woken by your own coughing, a car backfiring on the street, or the gnawing pain of a wound that never healed right. Sleep too hard, and you might wake up soaked in sweat, shaking with fever, the start of an infection so bad it could force the whole gang to run again before anyone's ready. Hygiene? Best not to ask. The closest thing to a bath was a rusty wash basin and a handful of cold water. If you wanted luxury, you waited for a safe house with a tub, then thought twice about climbing in. Soap was precious, towels even rarer, and privacy was a fantasy. Mostly, you'd scrub what you could, towel down with whatever was handy, and hoped the lice either drowned or gave up. The rest of the time, you learned to live with the stink and the fear that your own smell might give you away before the law did. Food, meanwhile, became a game of diminishing returns. When money was fresh and the manhunt hadn't hit fever pitch, you might get a real meal, something hot wrapped in butcher's paper, eaten in tense silence with the windows blacked out. But as the heat closed in, even that comfort vanished. The more famous you became, the smaller and grimier your world got. Restaurants, out. Grocery runs, a risk. Dinner became whatever you could buy in bulk, hide in a pocket, or eat cold from a can. Canned beans, cold meat, stale crackers, maybe bread if you were lucky. And if you ever wondered what Depression-era potted meat tasted like, let's just say for Dillinger, that was fine dining. You ate with dirty fingers, wiped your mouth on your sleeve, and tried to ignore the taste of metal and the new crumb trail in your bed. But wounds and food mixed into the worst combination. A cut hand or bullet graze, always exposed to dirty water, crusty bread, and sweat-soaked bandages, was basically an open invitation to infection. If it got really bad, fever, chills, delirium, the crew had to choose, risk a doctor and get caught, or watch a friend fade away in a back room. Too notorious to seek help. Sometimes the decision was made for them. A wound turned, the fever spiked, and suddenly it was time to pack up again in the middle of the night, dragging a half-healed body into the darkness, leaving behind blood-stained sheets and a stench that stuck for days. Every new hideout brought new risks. Maybe the neighbor caught a whiff of something foul. Maybe the grocer started asking weird questions about your shopping habits. Maybe the lice got so bad you had to risk daylight just to find someplace cleaner, and every move cost you. The effort it took to limp, to carry the wounded, to stay on alert even when your eyelids burned with exhaustion. Every bit of misery was another enemy, just as real as the lawmen. And this is the real midpoint of outlaw survival, not the gun battles or car chases, but the slow, grinding collapse of the body and the will. By the time Dillinger's name was in every headline, his world had shrunk to a few dirty rooms, a pocket of stolen food, a suitcase of filthy clothes, and the hope that nothing started to rot before the next safe house could be found. If there's such a thing as luxury in this life, it isn't fame or money, it's a clean towel and one night without fever or fear. But if you think that's rock bottom, hold on. For Dillinger, the true collapse wasn't a single moment of pain or hunger. It was the slow defeat of the body and spirit under pressure. Nobody could survive for long. Outlaw survival wasn't about outshooting the law. It was about outlasting your own body's limits. And sometimes even that wasn't possible. The hardest part? Movement. Every day on the run meant moving before you could heal, before the lice were gone, before you'd even had a real night's sleep. No matter how sick or battered you got, you couldn't stop long enough to recover. If a fever hit, you wrapped yourself in sweat-soaked blankets and shivered, while the others argued, risk a pharmacy, or hope it breaks. Sometimes the only medicine left was a shot of cheap whiskey and a prayer you didn't start coughing blood. And if you couldn't walk, somebody might have to carry you, dead weight, half conscious, through alleys or muddy fields. Every step another chance to get spotted. Movement wasn't just about hiding from police. Every safe house turned sour, fast. Beds got so filthy even desperate men couldn't rest. Lice didn't just itch. They spread from man to man, turning everyone's skin raw and tempers even rawer. When the crew finally abandoned a hideout, they left more than empty cans and bloody rags. They left armies of lice, the stink of old sweat, and sometimes a fever that would follow to the next safe place. That's what ground them down in the end. Not the shootouts, not the manhunts, but this relentless physical grind. The irony of being public enemy has-hone. The more notorious you got, the smaller your world became. Once, Dillinger's crew might risk a hotel or a hot bath. By the end, they were lucky to find a room with a door that locked and a mattress that hadn't already collapsed. Every cough, every trip to the store, even the sound of your own footsteps in the hall at 3 a.m., that could be the thing that gave you away. And here's the secret the heist movies never show. The guns and money can't fix a body that's falling apart. They don't stop lice, heal wounds, or feed you when you're starving and too famous to risk a diner. The legend of Dillinger is big on bravado. The reality? Picture a man limping through his last months, nursing infected cuts, dodging police and neighbors, trading one ache for another, and running out of options. In the end, even Dillinger's last stand wasn't about being fearless. It was about having nothing left to give. The body can only take so many festering wounds, so many sleepless nights, so much hunger and fear. When he was finally cornered outside the Biograph Theater, gunned down in front of a crowd, he wasn't the folk hero from the newsreels. He was a man reduced to sweat-stained shirts, bad food, lice, pain, and a final walk he probably knew he couldn't outrun. That's the truth the legend leaves out. Dillinger's greatest enemy was never just the law. It was the daily, grinding destruction of living as a hunted man in a body that could barely keep up. The story didn't end with a gunshot. It ended with the cost of every miserable improvisation along the way. So next time you see a Hollywood bank robbery, remember, the reality stank. It bled, it itched, it was survival. And for Dillinger, it was a bill nobody could dodge forever. If you want to see more of the real, unvarnished side of American outlaw history, the bad food, the filth, the pain behind the headlines, subscribe. This is where the legends get stripped down to the bone.